Let's just see how this episode. This is from the same interview on Windows Central.
Sure.
Just quoting him over here. The Mythic Plus Crest gearing system meets almost all of our design goals, save for that clarity and intuitiveness, which I agree. It's not intuitive and it's not clear at all.
Sure.
Especially for new people. Now, for us, for me, for you guys, it's okay, but talking about new people. That is one area we want to focus on in terms of naming them, tutorialization, and so on.
Isn't it interesting that we've addressed this very exact point a bunch of times in the last 6 months?
I think we also addressed this in our interview with him.
Yeah, I was trying to think back at it because
we did, but he didn't give us this. His answer back then was like, there's always room for improvement and we're going to keep iterating on the system.
I mean, if you don't have anything concrete, you have to say that, and that's fair.
Yeah. We want to make it more logical about what should you be doing with crests. Okay, now let's go a little bit further. The idea is to give players of all playstyles goal to work towards, with ongoing power advancements beyond specific item drops. Crests are an important part of the tiered structure of World of Warcraft, helping sure that the best way to get stronger is to push into harder content, rather than just grind basic content massively,
Agreed.
as we saw previously with artifact powers and things like that. Okay. You should want to complete higher tier dungeons, but making it clear on how to get there is something we want to address. So what do you think from this, Flame? Do you think he realizes the actual problems? Okay, I'm not saying these are not problems. Clearly they are, but
I feel like he's dodging the real problem here. Maybe this is just my bias, and I don't want to insert my bias too much because I feel like I've been doing that lately in the last couple of weeks.
Put that bias in, Flame. Put it in.
My bias is that in their efforts to make the gearing more straightforward, they're still going to keep the gated tiers of gear, which I think is the real problem, and we will make it a little bit simpler, but the problem will still be there. And once they've implemented the fixes of maybe, let's say for the sake of it, they will be calling it hero crests and myth crests and champion crests and val. Let's say that's what they're going for, so that it's clearly and intuitive to address exactly what items they're supposed to be fixing, or maybe they're going to name them based off of the content that they're dropping, heroic crest or mythic trek crest or normal crest or whatever, right? Whatever name they choose to make it intuitive and make it have sense so that people know what they're supposed to be doing, it's still going to leave the items be bracketed and gated into their respective tiers, which I think is still going to be a problem, and it will still make farming harder content hard. So the reason why I'm skeptical about this, because what does he say here? That he wants people to want to do harder content, which is fair. That's definitely what you want to do. But I feel like that's never going to be realized until they break this barrier. I feel like that's never going to be realized until, my personal bias is, you can transform a champion track item into a hero track item. You can so what I mean by that, let's say it takes Gilded Crest to get from 5 out of 6 hero track to 6 out of 6 hero tracks. You should be able to get it from 6 out of 6 hero track to whatever myth track equivalent would be. I think that's 2 out of 6 or 3 out of 6 myth track. It's already so convoluted, see? And what you need to get through that, it should be something currency drops that drops from mythic track equivalent content, like mythic raids or plus 10s or whatever you want to call it, right? But that should be possible, because I don't feel like I will ever be incentivized to farm harder and harder content until I can transfer a shit item into a good item by doing that said harder content. And I don't think that's going to happen. That's just going to still be the same thing. It's just going to be a little bit more intuitive. So I'm curious to see how they're going to be implementing this.
Well, it's a first step, I would say. So I'm very copy here. Okay.
Sure.
It's a, step-by-step situation. In an ideal world, what you said, like, transforming an actual champion into like hero and so on and so forth, that's something that could potentially be happening maybe in 11.2 or maybe next expansion. I don't know how much tech is behind this, in the sense that it can be changed quite easily around the go, or does it take a lot of time to actually implement a new version of the system where it's much more
I'm going to tell you right now,
streamlined?
it's already in the game. Whenever you upgrade an item, even from 1 to 6 hero track, it will at 5 out of 6 hero track, I think it turns into a mythic item. So it changes appearances into that mythic equivalent of that item. So the tech and the coding in there to associate this idea of an item to this ID of an item to a mythic version of that item is already in the game, because it changes its appearance. It just doesn't change its tooltip. But that is already there. They just need to make it change its tooltip, because I think the fundamental problem in an MMORPG is that I loot the Arakara sack brute, but there's 5 different different Arakara sac brutes. And no matter how
it's the
intuitive...
example you gave for the Dynamo Force.
Yeah.
You're farming the same item over and over again, but different versions of it.
No matter how easy and straightforward you make it upgradable, it's still going to be replaced with the same item, just at a higher track. Whatever you call those tracks, that barrier will still be there. So the whole concept of pushing harder content is relative, because if you can push your harder content, you're already looting that Arakara sac brute at the track that you wanted. So it's a little bit redundant. It depends on how they implement it.
Yeah, man, I hope we're not coming across as like ultra negative about the game.
No.
I mean, in our opinion, we're giving like our super constructive criticism or whatever feedback on what we think it's like problematic, right? But we still love the game. Well, I think like just want to like disclaim this, like we play the game every day. we raid, we Mythic Plus, and putting aside all the YouTube content and all of that, I feel the game right now, even with all of the shit we're talking about and the feedback we're trying to give out, I think it's in a really good state.
It's in the best state that it's been probably since
in a while. In a while, for sure. Yeah. I just feel it's a shame they didn't capitalize enough on that, to be fair, because War Within had such a good momentum. Like once that people started to play it and get into it, you know, the story, beginning of the season, all of that, and they could have addressed a lot of these pain points back then.
That's the sad part, because it feels like the momentum is lost based off of points that we've been... the community has been making for years. Because people have been complaining about the gearing, the difficulty, the mechanics. I've been complaining for years, not everybody equally, but it feels like such a shame. So many people come in and they fall off because of the same things that haven't been addressed yet. Maybe we're wrong, but I mean, the numbers don't really point into that direction so far, so who knows?
Yeah, one of the, I would say, better perspectives here is that as opposed to like times where we complained or had feedback for the game, Shadowlands time, BFA time, War with Dragonflight time, I'll say Dragonflight a little less, but it's definitely clear now that they're much more open to communication, to like listening to feedback, to being aware of it, to like actually, I mean, I always bring this up, and I sometimes go back and watch the interview Preach had with Ion in regards to patch 9.1.
Oh my God.
Where he was so stubborn with everything that Preach tried to like, you know, tell him like, dude, this is not good, it's not perceived well. It's very different now. Like even in our interview with Ion, he didn't like back off. Like even like the 6-player Mythic Plus thing, he didn't like completely rejected it. He tried to like, you know, get some, you know, context for it, you know, explain like how that will change everything. So you can see the shift in how they address this, right? I generally feel they care much more about the community or what the people are saying, reading forums, Reddits, feedbacks, all of that, videos, streams, all that. They're much more aware. Maybe they were aware in the past, but they never acted on it at the level they. So this is why I'm saying, it
feels like you want to feedback more now that you know that they're listening to it more, and you might actually have an impact on the game, at least from a positive perspective. Anyway, and we actually called out these kind of changes ever since Zeroth Mortis, where we felt the shift in their mentality slightly, and the shift has been shifting ever since for like 2 expansions straight, and now we have the game that we have today, which is almost unrecognizable for what was like 2 expansions ago.
A lot of people forget like how bad it was at some point in Shadowlands specifically, and I remember a lot of people complaining still in BFA, rightfully so.
Island expeditions, warfronts.
Yeah, but people still play the hell out of it. Granted, that was the expansion that caught us mid-virus, right? A lot of people stayed at home, and then there was a lot of like people playing, but complaints were still there. People always complain about shit. I feel like for folks like, again, I'm trying to think about that interview where he said that a lot of people dropped off coming from Delves and getting into Mythic Plus. I think that's so important, because if you're acknowledging that, and
it's a very specific thing to be publicly aware of it, because they probably know a lot more stuff, but to say it publicly, that means that they're definitely going to act on it.
Let me tell you something. If we would have logs for Delves, I can guarantee you the numbers would have been astronomically higher than all of Mythic Plus and raids. I
think so?
Yeah, because you have to be aware, like the biggest crowd that plays this game is not us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's like
we're in the fifth. We're barely half.
I don't even want to I don't want to ballpark it, but I think why he mentioned that is because they saw how many people got back into the game or tried the game for the first time. They saw that they started with Delves because they advertised the shit out of Delves. In some capacity, it was like the feature.
It was the bet. So what they did at the beginning of the season, where they gated gear from Mythic Zeros and Heroics and stuff like that, just to promote gearing from those, was brilliant.
Yes.
Because not only would new players come into the game and see, oh, Mythic Plus isn't available, but this whole other thing is available. But they also saw people like us who normally probably wouldn't do delves, delves as well. And they're like, oh, but everybody's doing this whole new content. Let's do this new content, right? So that was very brilliant.
Everybody and their moms was doing delves because it was like for people like us. You remember they did a very similar thing at the beginning of season 1 of Shadowlands with arenas, and everybody was doing arenas because of the gear.
When they increase the gear rewards.
And they added they brought back the vendor.
Yeah, they did it first for PvP. We didn't have that for PvE yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And everybody was like,
this is
so fucking hilarious, man. Whenever they do thing that we asked, like you see this surgence of people that just flocked with like flies to shit, and they just played the crap out of the game, even though it kind of ruined PvP for PvP players. Everybody was like, I don't care, just give me that gear, bro. And then they added the fucking vendors for PvE, and everybody was doing dungeons left and right. Funny how that fucking works, ain't it?
When things like this happen, like incentivizing delves, why were they incentivized? Well, it was the rewards. Once again, it was the gear. Incentivizing arenas, well, there was the rewards.
And once again, it all revolves. People are able to do a tremendous amount of bullshit if they get rewarded fairly for it. So it all comes down to what you get from what you do.
Exactly.